everyone, welcome to Watch It Paint It. Today I'm painting another character from Monster Slaughter by Ankama Games. This is currently on Kickstarter, so I'll leave a link in the description below so you can go and check it out if you're interested. It's only got a couple of days left, so make sure if you are interested in this, go and check that out as soon as you can. After that, I've still got all the prototypes, so I may be painting them throughout the length of the sort of delivery of this Kickstarter, so hopefully you can still tune in for those periodically. So in this tutorial we're painting another werewolf, and this time I'm going to paint the mummy, the werewolf mum, and that's the sort of that's the wolf from Little Red Riding Hood. So I'm going to take the model. This is a prototype model again, and it's in clear plastic this time. I've never painted clear plastic before. It's slightly different to other plastic. I feel like the paint just looks different on it. It takes a few more coats to cover up that sort of thing. So I'm attaching it to the hobby holder, which I've also done an initial product sort of review for on the site if you've not checked that out. We're going to start with Somber Grey. This is by Vallejo, and I'm using my regiment brush by the Army Painter, and I'm going to use this grey to paint in all of her skin. As I discussed on the Dad Werewolf video, I felt like that grey was too light and he should have been this colour. From the art that you can see, I think this is quite a this should be a dark grey. I feel like this is maybe the Necromancer's Cloak, quite a dark grey wolf. But I thought I'd paint it blue so you could see what that looks like on a wolf. So next is the Gory Red, and that's by Vallejo. So this is my darkest red, and I'm going to be painting all of her cloak in this, the Little Red Riding Hood cloak. I'm not going to be using any shader. Any wash on this part of the model, so I'm just going to colour it with my dark red to begin with and highlight up from that point. So I'm still using my regiment brush here, and I'm just applying it quite watered down and as evenly as I can through all of the cloak you can see. Although this model is quite big, it's quite a bulky wide model, there's very few colours to it, so this red's taken a while because there's quite a lot to do, but it's very simple, very easy to do. I'm going to use Plague Brown. That's the sort of yellowy, dirty, really light brown by Vallejo, and I'm going to be painting in her dress that's under the cloak. I'm also just going to give a base coat to the plastic. I'd not primed this, so I'm using Vallejo's game colour, which you can apply straight to plastic apparently and use it as the base colour and primer, and I'm finding that's working really well, and especially on a model that's like a prototype and it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. I think it's great for that. I'm going to paint in the basket and the hand there more accidentally than anything, but yeah, the basket I want to be this colour. The base is I'm going to change later on, and that's just to give a single coat. And then straight away I decided, nah, I didn't like the colour of her dress. I can't see the colour in the artwork, so I'm sort of guessing here, and I decided I think a pink will go pretty well with that, but you could pick whatever colour you like, whatever colour you think will go nicely with red. I'd paint a top in that. I mean, at the end of it, it's not going to matter too much. You can barely see it, although it's quite a large area. It's quite fiddly to get to, so I am using my detail brush here now, just to try not to catch any of the red or blue. This should have probably been painted before the cloak. I don't know which is more fiddly, the cloak or the dress. It's probably 50-50. Either way, it might involve some touching up of the other colour once you've finished. I'm also painting in between the legs in this colour. I'm just applying the dresses sort of a onesie or something, I'm not quite sure there. Pale Flesh is next, and that's to paint that hand that's coming out of the basket. So it's a little bit torn here. Again, you can't see in the artwork how old is this hand. Is it still connected to the rest of the body? I don't know. Should it be a sort of dead skin colour? So I went for Pale Flesh. You know, it's a flesh colour and it's light, as though potentially it's been dead for a small amount of time at least. Survivor Shader is one of the only two shades I'm going to use, and this is my black shade. And I'm just painting the underside of the model, so the underside of that cloak and the underside of her dress there, just to darken it down. You can't really see under there anyway, but just to give it a darker look. And then I'm going to use the light tone shader, and this is just to do the very light colours. So that's the basket, her hair. Sorry, I did her hair in the Plague Brown as well to give a light blonde look to it. And I'm also painting that, yeah, as I said, that hand, basket, and hair, just to give them a little bit of shade in between all the bits. And then on to highlighting, and I'm going to start with Somber Grey mixed with Wolf Grey, about 66%, 33% of the Wolf Grey, and this is to start highlighting up the fur. It's the first highlight I'm going to do, and I'm going to just catch basically every single bit of raised wolf that I can find. I'm really just leaving that original Somber Grey in all the cracks, so I'm using that, leaving that where you'd leave the shade normally, or the shade would run, so that's sort of between the fingers, under the under her neck, sort of around her eyes and her mouth, and then in all the muscle, the deep parts of the muscle. Hopefully you can see it. I'm doing that, and you can sort of see which bits I'm leaving. So basically covering most of the model back in this colour. So this is the sort of colour I wanted her to be, and I just used the original somber grey to be the shaded bits. So you just really follow through this bit as best you can. You can slow it down in YouTube. That was pointed out by, apologies, I've forgotten who, but at least one subscriber has mentioned to me you can slow down YouTube videos. So if this is ever going too fast, just reduce the speed a little bit. My voice is going to sound a little bit funny, but you probably muted me anyway if you're watching it again and again and again. So there's a little tip for you on YouTube. I also guess you guys aren't really painting these yet because you haven't got the models, and they won't be coming for at least some time. So hopefully you'll be watching this again in the future when your games do arrive and you're on to painting these cool models. So next I'm going to take Somber Grey and Wolf Grey, and this time I'm going to mix it 50-50. So I'm increasing the Wolf Grey, and you can guess these colours, mix them up on the palette next to each other, and just increase the lightness of the grey gradually as you're going up, but the amounts you want to do. Now this time I'm using my detail brush, I did for the last coat as well, and I'm just now applying this lighter colour to the more raised parts. So that's the sort of knuckles, her nose, the tips of her ears, the kneecap, and then the edges of all the muscles, and then all those raised bits of her paw. So it's some places it's where I applied the last coat, and I'm just applying a thinner amount in the middle of that, and then other places it's just really catching the very, very tip of those, like the bones that would be sticking through, and those lumps on her fur there you could see. I'm highlighting those up lighter and making sure to leave less of this colour on, so I'm just really catching the tips of it. And then all of her bones basically, in her paws, you could see I was highlighting along those, each toe, each bone, each section of bone as well. Lastly, I'm just going to take Wolf Grey Neat, and this is to apply a very, very tiny highlight to each of those aforementioned areas. So just a little dot on each, just to really make those bones pop out, and a little bit more on her face, because I really want to catch those highlights on her face, because that's the focal point of the model. That's where I'd spend more of my time. If somebody's going to look at your artwork, they're going to pick up and look at the face primarily. And then Warlord Purple mixed with Squid Pink, 2-to-1, so that's 66-33%, and this is to highlight up all the raised areas of her dress, so the bottom bit that you can reach, her chest area, and all the raised folded areas you can get the brush to. And then I'm going to mix 50-50 Warlord and Squid Pink, and this is just to get that final highlight on all those raised bits, so a smaller bit on the top of her chest only, and then along the bottom of her dress. We're going to move on to highlighting her cloak. We're going to start with Gory Red, and I'm going to be mixing the Hot Orange to make this lighter and lighter. So we're starting with 66% Gory Red and a third, so that's a 2-to-1 mix. And then I'm basically just taking my regiment brush. This episode, by the way, is brought to you by the word basically. Apologise for that. I've just got words stuck in my head, as I often do when I'm doing my videos. And I'm just taking this regiment brush and applying it generously to all of the areas. This is heavily watered down. I've taken half the paint and half water. I've got it nice and runny. That's why it looks like there's so much of it on my brush, but it's actually just a lot of really watery paint, and then it's sort of blobbing it on and then working that up the model. So the reason I've got it so thin is I'm quite happy for the undercolour to just show through. I'm not using this colour as strongly as I need it to be. I just want it to highlight it up a little bit. I'm going for a very, very subtle highlight and just gradually working this up with layers. So this part is exactly the same colour, but I've switched down to my detail brush, and that's just to get all the edges, all those folds, all the raised parts of it, which get a lot trickier as you move up the model. Not that they're not tricky as such, that's probably the wrong word, they're more just, they're smaller. So all of this was very, very easy to do. Some of the dress was a little bit difficult to get the brush into, but the rest is just a piece of cake, really. This is a very easy, simple model to paint. Next, it's 50-50 Gory Red and Hot Orange, and I'm just applying a smaller amount. It's still heavily watered down, so again, I'm just letting these sort of, you can see through this paint as it dries, and it's just building up a layer of brightness. And I'm just applying less of it this time, so I'm not going as high up the model. I'm starting at the bottom of each layer of cape and just raising it and gradually pushing that paint up the model, just not taking it as high as the previous coat. and then going to get the detail brush exactly the same and go around all those raised bits of each fold, get the very edge of all the folds on the top sections of the model and the hood. And we're just going to touch up and get a bit of blending with the lower down bits as well. As the paint started to dry, I could see where it was clumping, and I just blended it in a little bit better. And then for the final highlight, I'm just going to take hot orange, I'm going to use my detail brush, and I'm simply just going to draw a line all the way around the bottom of her cloak, so getting that, just the edge of the bottom of the cloak, not right into all the nooks and crannies, but just roughly where the light would be catching. And then I'm going to paint on any massive folds that you could see, and then I'm just going to do the same on every layer as we move up the model. So just painting on that very bottom layer, and this is going to give it a really nice looking highlight, a little pop to it that really stands out quite well on the table, especially makes you suddenly realise the model's being highlighted from a distance. This bit takes a little bit of time because you're using a small brush, and I'm trying to be very careful not to get it anywhere I don't mean to, but at the same time it's not difficult. This is very easy, and it's very simple. You're just using a neat colour. I've not added much water to this because I don't want it to run anywhere, and I'm just applying a highlight all over the raised bits. Around the centre of the hood there is quite important. And again, as I mentioned before, when you pick up the model to inspect, you're primarily looking at the face, and that hood's going to stand out as well. She's got a peak in the hood, so I highlighted that up as well. Plague Brown's out, and that's just to highlight back up the basket that we painted in before and then added that shade to. So here I'm just catching the lip of the lid of the basket, I'm highlighting up the handle itself a little bit, and then I'm just going to catch both edges of the basket there, and then I'm going to very carefully highlight up her pigtail, a ponytail, pigtail, whichever it is, and just catch each part of the plait one at a time. And then I'm going to be also doing her nails in the same colour. Next I'm mixing Bay Blonde, that's by the Army Painter. I'm going to use Play Brown by Vallejo, mixing this about 50-50. I'm just making a lighter version, and I'm going to catch the edges of all of her claws and just put a little bit on all the corners of the basket from before. Pale Flesh, so this is just the same as the base colour I used before by Vallejo, and I'm just painting in the fingers, leaving the shade in between all of the fingers, getting an extra bit once that dried, 2 coats onto the sort of knuckle areas where the places you want to pop more. Bay Blonde Neat, and this is to paint in both of her eyeballs, and I'm just going to add a tiny line down each claw, down the very centre, just to give that extra 3D look by the end. After that I'm going to take out my turquoise, and I'm painting the base to try and match the cards of the werewolf. So these are all going to be turquoise, the 3 werewolves will be turquoise, just to think it makes it a little bit easier to recognise your little gang, your little family on the board when it's the colour you're used to. Obviously once you're used to the game you know which is which anyway. Dead Black's out, and I'm going to paint her in 2 little eyeballs. Try not to get any crazy eyes, but I think straight away that looked good, perfect for once. I'm also going to use Dead Black just to paint around the rim of the base, the lip of the base, and that's just to bring you, I think it brings your eyes back to the actual model instead of focusing on too much colour of the base. So there we go. That is the Mummy Werewolf completely painted, completely finished. That took 1 hour and 42 minutes, quite long. It wasn't hard though, it was just time consuming. There was a lot of painting and I did a lot of highlighting. I think I could have maybe used a brighter red and just used a shade. Would that have been better? Let me know in the comments. Do you think I should have just shaded it? It is a main character, so I didn't want to rush it, but you know, sometimes we've got to save time. That's it. Thank you all very much for watching.